Yo, what up, guys, and welcome to midnight. I know, crazy. I think we could all use a little bit of excitement and anticipation in our lives right now. I know that I can. Um, and wow, Unholy rework for the first time in many, many, many years. There have been some changes to the Unholy specialization in that time, but nothing that completely overhauls the gameplay loop, play style, feel, class fantasy like this. I mean, this is completely different, and it's in big part, of course, because of the removal of the wounds mechanic. I know a lot of people are excited about that. Maybe you liked it, but then it overstayed its welcome. Maybe you never liked it to begin with. I'm actually in that camp myself. I thought it was a little clunky and unwieldy for the state of retail PvP. Retail PvP and PvE is very fluid. Like you can always feel like you're doing damage. You can move around from target to target, right? You have agency over what you want to hit and how you want to burst it. But the wounds kind of got stuck on a player or an NPC, a target, whatever, and then you were kind of locked in there for a little bit, especially in like a PvP, a solo shuffle environment, when somebody is rotting to death, which happens a lot, and you want to swap over to them, but you got 6 wounds on another guy. That doesn't feel super good. The class fantasy, I think, was all wrong. This is totally an opinion, but, Unholy is rot and snowball and a cloud of death and ramping up unhealable damage. But then the wounds were generate wound, spend wound, generate wound, spend wound. It was just an instance of damage, right? You press the wound, and then you were able to spend it for more damage. It didn't ramp anything. It didn't really feel like it was rotting. It was just combo point, spend combo point, which is not really an unholy thing. That is totally different now. You have spenders that ramp up your damage with minions and disease amps that create an exploding snowball, whatever you want to call it, a cloud of death, like I said, that continue to increase your output over time. Your burst window continues to grow and grow and grow the better you rotate your spender. It is extremely fun. You have some other burst options, from spending your ghouls and exploding them. They're very expendable, something the Lich King might do. The class fantasy is off the charts. The smoothness is there. You can target swap. You can ramp rot. It is very, very, very fun. So, of course, I've already blabbed enough. What I'm actually going to do for you guys is I'm going to go over the talents in the Wowhead talent calculator. So let's do that real quick. The reason for this is because beta's been crashing a little bit, and I don't want it to interrupt, an explanation of a talent, and I'll have to make some edits. So I'm going to go over the talents right here in the Wowhead talent calculator, and then I'm going to go back to beta, and if it is it's working at the time and we can get enough time, I want to show you guys the rotation in real time so you can see the fluidity and motion of the spec, the game design, the all of it, in real time with visual evidence. So we'll try that, but first we're going to look at each talent and show you how it all comes together. And we'll start at the top with Outbreak. So instead of applying the 3 diseases of Super Strain, now you have a Virulent Plague that can be spread to multiple targets. That's your AoE Rot, right? That's your multiple targets taking damage from you at a time. But then you have the Dread Plague that needs to be zeroed in on one guy, one target, one enemy, one player, and that will amp up your damage on whoever your kill target is, whether it's a boss or a PvP player. Very exciting to have that. It means that your damage, again, of course, can be ramped up and zeroed in on whoever you want to funnel that damage into. And it means that Dread Plague can really do a lot of damage, right? This is something, I know it's the first talent and I'm already starting to blab on about it, but we didn't have that, right? All your diseases could be applied to everybody, which means some of them really couldn't do that much rot damage, because what if you put it on everybody? Then your overall DPS would be way too high. This allows them to tune Dread Plague appropriately, so it really feels like you have single target rot pressure. So you're very destructive toward whoever you're amping up your disease damage on, without making it over the top. You put the Dread Plague on everybody and now you're doing 70 billion DPS, right? So that's a very good idea. Just right off the first talent, Outbreak is smart. So I like that. Again, maybe some of this is just change and I'm excited about and blinded to the truth, but I don't know. I'd like to think that these things really do feel the way that they intended. So I think it's good. Scourge Strike is now your new spender, and this is how it works, right? Well, it was your spender before, but this is how it works now. You get to amp diseases on the target. You can see dealing their damage an additional time at 35% effectiveness. That's your plagues on the target. Very exciting to have a disease amp right off the bat. But then also, if you press Fester Strike, so you have Fester Strike and Scourge Strike, then your next few Scourge Strikes are going to summon a ghoul. Your lesser ghouls are going to build you an army of ghouls that can do ramping damage, but then also can be blown up by putrefy, and we'll talk about that in a second, to do spike damage. And the reason why I think this is so cool, like I said, is because that means instead of generating a wound and spending it with Scourge Strike, you are, and then getting one individual instance of damage, right? Bursting that wound did damage. You're now summoning a ghoul that does future damage. But the more you press Scourge Strike, the more ghouls you're going to have, which means your future damage is continuing to rise. So each press does not do individual damage, although it does some from the Unholy Strike, but it's also causing your future damage to ramp up higher, making that burst window extend and amplify, which is really cool and feels like Unholy to me. But if you need on-demand damage, you have it, because Scourge Strike has a talent that does a damage mod on it, so it's going to hit harder individually, and then you can spend those ghouls with putrefy. So you have an army, and then you blow them up for a huge explosion of damage. And it also does things like later in the talent tree, there's some mods for this and some cooldown reduction for this. You have 2 charges in PvE, but then 3 charges in PvP with necrotic wounds. Very exciting. So you can blow everything up at once, or you can extend it over a period to have more sustained pressure. You have control over if you want to be bursty or sustained. That's really cool. It puts more agency in the player. But then, this is not like blowing up your main ghoul, by the way, like your big guy that's going to get dark transformed and stuff, where it feels like, oh, should I even press it because it's better to just keep my ghoul out for damage? No, your lesser ghouls you spawn ton of, and then you have these charges to get one of them to do a nice instance of burst damage. So feels very good to press. Does not feel like you're weakening yourself at all, and the engine is really nice. Of course, then you have Sudden Doom, which just gives you more usages over Death Coil, because it costs less runic power and then makes it do more damage. But then really it has all these talents below that allow it to do more things whenever you get a Sudden Doom proc. Of course, Doom Bidding right next to it is one of them. There's another way to summon your lesser ghouls, right? So this army is going to be being built over the match, over the keystone easily. Through your standard spending rotation. So again, your spenders still do have tons of agency, just in a different way that has nothing to do with the removed wounds mechanic. Then, of course, you have various disease mods like foul infections, even fever. This just make your diseases do more damage, which can be further amped by your Scourge Strike spender, and then generate runic power. By the way, this talent tree that I've built is in no way like the talents anybody's going to be running guaranteed. Everything is subject to tuning, and I have not played a PvP game or gone into a dungeon yet. I just wanted to see some talents that had synergies and show you all of them. For example, you got Morbidity. This stacks twice. There's a 2 out of 2 on this right now in beta, so it's 4% increased damage per disease. Of course, that's good, right? That's just a damage mod to all of your damage per disease. And of course, you want to have your diseases on every target that you can. So I'm sure we'll find this. You also have things like the crit damage mods here, rather for diseases or for minions. In PvP, I don't think we might not even use this because we don't get a lot of crit, but in PvE, of course, I'm sure a crit damage mod to a main source of damage is going to be very valuable, and it also allows you to use Soul Reaper, which is also better in PvE because it's an execute window on bosses. It does have some mods now, like taking increased damage from diseases and minions, making it a really, really powerful execute window tool. And then over here, of course, you have the old classic Dark Transformation, which I do think is off the global. We'll check when we're doing the rotation, we'll check it, but it does a little spike damage from the Unholy Blast. Off global is pretty cool. Very fluid, and then improves your monstrosity, and everything has mods these days, so Death Coil extends the effect, giving you more pet damage for longer. Obvious choice, and it leads to everything else. Then you have another choice node where you can get longer ghouls or more damage on your ghouls. I don't know the tuning on that, but generally you like having more damage quicker in a PvP environment, at least, and maybe even in a PvE environment when mobs are dying very quick, like Mythic Plus or a fast dungeon. So having the minions do more damage feels good to me, but again, that's just Feelycraft because I don't know how the tuning looks on those, but there's just another choice node. Then you have more Magus generation here. We had a lot of that in the old talent tree, and this is no exception. You've got the first one right here from Dark Transformation and Army of the Dead. And Army of the Dead is modified at the very bottom to make it do something different. In this case, raise A-bomb for me. So when you press that big button, you get Magus of the Dead, which can do a little bit of a Frostbolt dam and slow, or it can just do big Shadow Bolt dam, and you can cause that to cleave as well, like you used to be able to do. These are just more minions, and you have minion mods all over the tree, so very, very nice to have. Then you have this Sudden Doom mod here in Harbinger, which gives it more access to it, more charges of it, and then gives it yet another effect where it reduces the cooldown like I promised on Putrefy, so you can have more instances of that big spike damage. Very, very cool. Then Putrefy giving another mod, giving you more pet damage, and this last part, multiple applications may overlap, is very cool because then it allows you to use it in a very bursty situation if you want to. Just go Putrefy, 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 and then it's not like you're munching the buff. That feels really good because otherwise it's like, do I even want to press another? Because like all of these different amps or buffs that I give my pets or my diseases get munched. There's a lot of these talents that does not happen with. So you can go for a more bursty angle if you choose to. Very, very cool. Infected Claws used to apply wounds, so of course it doesn't do that anymore. Instead, it just gives you another dot disease rot dam. So probably very, very important. If it's tuned properly, it's going to be fantastic because the more rot you can get, and if it is amplified by your various talents in the tree, that's just going to make it even better. So of course you want more dots as a dot class. Getting some more extra damage and attack speed is really nice, especially since attack speed gives you more procs of Sudden Doom, which gives you all of those amps that we talked about. And then you have All Will Serve, still actually does exactly what it used to, which is summon another guy with a bow, a skulker, and he shoots explosive arrows, or blighted arrows, I guess. Never was very exciting, but with all these minions and all these diseases and all this chip damage, maybe the more sources of chip damage we have, the better. And of course, tuning persists throughout all of these future months, so maybe it'll be tuned to do a lot of chip damage. I mean, all it is numbers, right? So it's not clunky or anything, it's just passive numbers. So if those numbers are good, then it's good. Fantastic. Then you have like Death Coil mods and gives you a Death Coil dot. Again, if all of these things are classified as diseases and work with morbidity or other disease amps, finally, then that will be extremely good. Some of them may be, some of them may just be dots. We'll have to see how all of that's categorized later. Rapid Variant is just going to be like a Mythic plus PvE thing because it happens on when things die. So that is just, you want things to die, and then it's going to do a huge chunk of damage. It is kind of like that Wandering Plague mechanic, which I do think is really cool. Then you have Fester Scythe, which is way better than old Fester Scythe. It costs no runes, so that's just great because it's a free spender or a free generator. It gives you another amp, disease amp, which is so awesome. Having all these disease amps is really going to feel like you can control your rot pressure and amp it up. But man, I was actually asking for this in the DK Discord. I wonder if they saw that. It does damage and it AoEs. And again, it costs no runes, so it really feels like all of a sudden when that thing glows, you've got this huge chunk of bonus damage initially and then bonus damage in the future, which is the whole design space of Unholy right now. So Festering Scythe fits right into that, and I'm very happy that it's finally good. Again, you know, as long as tuning is good, it is good. The design space of it is good. And we're getting to the very bottom here. Thank you for sticking with me so far. You have the additional charge of Putrefy and dealing more damage. This is probably going to be an auto run in every single format. And then just a disease mod. This is going to be an auto run in every single format. I mean, that's just so fantastic to have big mods to your main tools of dealing damage. Reaping is another execute thing. But it actually is kind of nice because it allows your Soul Reaper to actually be used on anybody. Which is great because then you can actually get value out of Soul Reaper in a PvP environment. This is great because it has a PvP mod. We'll see if it still does. But if you spend a Putrefy, get a Soul Reaper proc, then you have some delayed damage. They'll have to dispel it if you CC the healer and they can't dispel it. Then boom, huge chunk of burst damage that you can actually access even in a PvP environment. I'm sure PvE will love this because it just makes your execute window insane. It seems like Unholy has one of the best execute windows in the game with all of these mods and effects that are specifically around the execute window. Then you have the old Fester Might. Since you're not boosting wounds anymore, it's around spending runic power. Does not seem like a bad trade-off, right? I mean, you can spend runic power very fast with all your death coil spamming, and again, it's got that multiple applications by overlap, so you can ramp it up, ramp it up, ramp it up, and then it'll slowly fall off stack by stack, which allows you to have, again, very snowbally burst windows. Then your Maguses now give you something. So even if Magus is not tuned as well, although it generally does do a huge chunk of damage, now getting more of them out ramps you up regardless, because your Mastery gives you pretty much damage to everything, diseases and minions. So the Maguses buff themselves and you. It's very good. Unholy Aura seems very good. Now you have that Putrefy mod that I was talking about. When you putrefy something, you get yet another Magus of the Dead, which is great. And then during Dark Transform, your Putrefy gets even more explosive. As you can see, it decays an additional Lesser Ghoul, which means you're bursting two ghouls, and they blow up and do a huge chunk of damage. So that Dark Transformation window becomes more impactful when you have reanimation, which is really nice because Dark Transformation didn't do a lot before, and now it feels like it is a bigger contributor to your burst. And the Maguses, like I said, they buff you. They do a lot of damage. That's fantastic. Then you have Army, which again is modified by Raise A-Bomb, which I'm talented into right now. The other one is Gargoyle, which does not look quite as good to me. It's going to putrefy 4 ghouls, so you want to make sure you grab 4 ghouls up before you press this button, so you can blow them all up at once for a huge chunk of burst damage and everything else that Putrefy gives. And then he himself does damage and applies a disease cloud, which makes your minions do more damage, and there's more minion mods. So you've got the disease mods I showed, you got the minion mods that I showed, you got a lot of ways to spawn minions, you have a lot of ways to blow up minions. The minions buff themselves, the minion buff other minions, the minions buff you, and you see how everything comes together to make 2 kind of tools of playing. Full diseases, full minions, and the ways they interact with each other. So instead of having 3 things to build around and never really being able to unify any of them, you have 2. You're a disease spec, you're a necromancer, you're a minion spec. And it really does feel like because there was just 2 and more talents and all the hero talents, they were able to actually flesh out the both playstyle and class fantasy of those 2 lines. Instead of having 3 half-baked ones, you have 2 that feel great to interact with. Let's finish up. We've got Scourge Strike being even more of a disease amp. So this is how you go down the diseases instead of the minions, right? It's very, very simple. Minions over here, diseases over here, and a little bit of both in the middle. But disease amp here, disease amp here. The explosion effect of Putrefy extends the duration of your plague. So that is a disease extender and amp, because you can see it deals 35%. So you have amp, amp, and then finally this pestilence ability, which is a nuke for your diseases. So it's like amp, amp, and then kaboom, right? So you have your own way of bursting, AoE bursting, which I'm sure is going to feel very, very good. And then you just reapply your diseases and burst again when you can. Finally, we have the new little line here, which just buffs up your spenders, Epidemic and Death Coil, AoE and single target spenders, respectively. One of them makes your Death Coil do more damage and pierce, which I think is really neat. So it goes through the targets, right, and hits everybody on the line, which is really neat, actually. Just having a way of coil doing damage and having a positional requirement. Maybe that's changed because like Glacial Advance exists for Frost, and I've never thought that was so cool. But this is more of because it's gonna hit the guy you fire it at, and it'll just happen to hit anybody through it as well. And then you have another way of giving your Scourge Strike to summon ghouls, which is great because during your burst, you want to be pressing Scourge Strike as much as possible. You saw all the mods on Scourge Strike in this line. So you really don't want to have to press Fester Strike as much if you want to just do as much damage on demand as you can. So Army of the Dead being a part of your burst window gives you some Scourge Strike. It presses right off the bat. And then finally, you can just amp up this Forbidden Knowledge duration, which is the thing that makes you have this necrotic coil, which icon, visual, all looks pretty cool. I think that's very neat. We'll finally take a look at, for the damage orient, for the Unholy orient, we'll look at Rider of the Apocalypse. Sand Lane, all of your minion mods seem to affect your riders as well, making Sand Lane or Sanlin, or however you pronounce this. I don't think I've ever pronounced it right. It feels a little more obsolete. I don't quite know in a PvE perspective, because I'm generally a PvP guy. That's probably why you're here. In PvP, you need riders for the mobility and for the damage reduction, and for, you know, just the various sources of really amazing ramp up chip damage, which is now fully synergistic with your entire damage profile. So it seems like this just got buffed, and Sanlane is falling even farther behind. Any PvEers, feel free to tell me if that's not the case over there. I'm actually really interested. But what pretty much happened is you have all of the old talents for Rider of the Apocalypse if you played War Within. If you're coming back from Midnight, you can hop on War Within right now and take a look. But you have all those old talents that have various mods and more riders and make your riders more damage. And then all the tier sets that came out, you have access to those as well. So here's your Death Charge, which gives you a horse that breaks roots and gives you a lot of speed. You have a damage mod. You have your massive wall when your horsemen are out. You have Dark Transformation now summoning White Mane, so there's another way to get more horsemen. And then you have all of the way to mod your horsemen to make them do more damage. Here's White Mane's mod. Here's Trollbane's mod. Here's Nazgrim giving you a mod to make you have more strength, which is more damage to every ability. And then Undeath is the disease that one of your horsemen puts on, and now it can stack up and spread. And it does that from Scourge Strike. And Scourge Strike is your damage amp for all your diseases already. So now when you play Rider, you're also getting Undeath amp, and you're pressing Scourge Strike and amping up all your rot on everybody. Is this spec really cool? I swear this is just really cool. I feel like this is the synergy between talents that we've needed for 8 years. I think it's been that much time. Wow. Rider looks so neat in tandem with, it just really feels like they go hand in hand. Then of course you got your Disease and Death Coil amp. You can extend your horsemen or just make your Death Coil do more damage. This is pretty much entirely dependent on how much Death Coil actually does. If your horsemen are doing so much with your minion mods, I really think you would just want to extend those with Fury of the Horsemen. Scourge Strike mod doing more damage, abilities from your horsemen doing more damage, and then, of course, the big payoff, Army of the Dead, which then turns into Raise A Bomb, summons all 4 of your horsemen, allowing you to get all of their effects at once. Holy cow! With the minion mods and the disease amps and getting benefit from more diseases, I don't know how you would ever choose anything other than Rider. They're going to have to do a lot of work on Sandlane for it to keep up, at least in a PvP environment, but it seems that way in PvE as well. Feel free to correct me. Then, and I'll go over this very briefly because I'll talk about it in both the Frost and Unholy video. You have a few changes to the major tree. Things like get an extra talent slot. So Gloom Ward used to be 15% 1 of 1, and now it's just 30% 2 of 2, which makes your AMS bigger and Power Word Shield bigger on you and any other absorbs that people can give you. Probably making healers very happy that their shields become so impactful as long as they use them on a DK. You have like this entire Death Pact additional talent, which is you go Death Pact and then you get a cooldown reduction and you also get more healing while the Healing Absorb is active, allowing you to heal off the Healing Absorb extremely quickly, making it less of a penalty. But also, if they put a huge heal into you that was going to do like, well, let's say War Within numbers. Let's say it was going to do 10 million healing, and now it does 15 million healing. Now the Healing Absorb actually became a buff, because not only did that bonus healing heal out the entire Healing Absorb, it then continued to give you more, right? Like, let's say the Healing Absorb is 2 million, and the heal was going to do 10 million. Now it does 15 million, so the 2 million Healing Absorb is gone, and it still does an extra 3 million healing. You see how the math works? So Death's Defiance is actually good if you're playing with a healer that has really, really big burst heals. Now, again, the numbers are all changing with the stat squish, but, you know, just take a magnitude of 1,000 off of all those numbers and the thing still applies, right? So if you have a class, maybe our Shaman does H-Pal. H-Pal has a lot of big bursty heals, or at least it used to. Anything that has huge bursty heals will love Death's Defiance. It makes the drawback way less painful. It gives you a spike heal and then gives your teammate a spike heal if they can link that up. Communication will help a ton with that, so Discord. But yeah, that actually makes Death Pact feel way less horrific if you can find a way to slot in both of these talents. Talked a little bit too much about that, but it is one of the biggest changes. Then you have all this damage mod and damage reduction based on your diseases. You have, or sorry, your minion, your ghoul, and you have just a nice little damage mod, of course, you're going to grab that. Runeforge effectiveness, you got the big AMSs down here now instead of up here. You've still got that mobility option. Now it's March of Darkness versus Wraithwalk. Wraithwalk is another root break. Huge movement speed increase, but you cannot do anything with it while it's active. You cannot attack or anything. But then this is just buffs into Death's Advance. So you just go faster in the beginning of Death's Advance. Now you have Asphyxiate as a choice node with Death's Reach, which I think is a really positive change because Death's Reach was really oppressive. Like healers could not get into healing range without being gripped. So now you have to you choose this. Like you really have to say, okay, I want to be able to grip the healer on their own range, 40 yards, or I want to have my Asphyxiate. So that's a really good choice because, again, the DK grip blind AoE one-shot was a little too oppressive, so then they had to nerf our actual damage profile. So now if they start taking some of that away, they can put the agency back in our actual damage profile. So I know it seems like a nerf, and I guess it is, but that is, as a result, you should have better tuning on all of your abilities because you're less oppressive in a PvP environment. Super cool. If that has any problem, I don't think that would have much problem with PvE. Like, these talents don't matter nearly as much in PvE, I think. But again, feel free to correct me. And you have the zone and the zone amp. Nothing crazy there. And then you just have the bottom is still very similar. I mean, the way it's organized is a little different, but all the talents that you'd want to run. You got the Osmosis is amazing. During your AMS, you just get more healing. You get Strength mod. You're always going to choose that. Null Magic is great. Just completely anti-caster. Having Grip reduce people's damage is never terrible. You just get these random passive damage mitigation things, and then Will of the Necropolis when you get low. The extra charge and all of these main abilities are going to be an auto pick. It's mobility. It's anti-mobility with Grip. And then you have Blood Draw, which was recently buffed in War Within. Or not recently buffed. It was buffed as of War Within to give you, again, more survivability with the damage reduction and the death strike cost reduction. So very, very similar on the left side, but some talents that were always bad, especially in PvP, like Death Pact, is now playable if you can get the mod for it. And some talents that were good are getting amped, like Gloom Ward, to make you even more tanky in those situations where you have a lot of absorbs or your AMS gets a lot of value. Then the AMS being that much bigger gives you longer access to Osmosis, which is extra healing. So a ton of ways to survive, an amazing damage profile, very synergistic talents, and awesome class fantasy. The PvP talents actually got changed. Necrotic Wound, again, gives you an extra Putrefy charge, which is great, and also allows Putrefy to give you that Necrotic Wound healing debuff. And the Necro Bargain makes it so Putrefy summons another ghoul, and that ghoul heals you. So more survivability at the cost of having less duration on your lesser ghouls. You could, I guess, run the extra lesser ghoul duration to counterbalance that, and then just have 2 extra seconds instead of 4. And get the heal from lesser wounds or from lesser ghouls. Lots of good stuff here. You still have all your utility stuff, and then Death Coil just is another disease amp from Doomburst. Wow. I mean, how many disease amps do you have? You're really going to be able to amplify your rod on a target, and that is awesome. So we're going to go over to beta. Thank you for listening to all my yapping if you did. We're going to go over to beta, and we're just going to take a look at the training dummies if I don't crash. I'll try a few times, see if I don't crash in any of them, and I'll just show you what that looks like. All right, got it working. Let's go over the visual representation of the spec, the playstyle, the gameplay at a rudimentary level. I'm going to walk over to the training dummy here, and I'm going to press Fester Strike to cause my Scourge Strike to summon some ghouls. In between, I might get some Death Coil procs, which I'm also going to use to summon ghouls. When I have a huge amount of ghouls, I'm going to press Army of the Dead, which summons Raise A Bomb, and then bursts 4 of those ghouls and gives me a damage mod to all of my minions, so a lot of burst. Then I'm going to press my cooldown Dark Transformation, and I am going to go back to generating some ghouls while spending Death Coil procs again, and I'm going to putrefy them. And while I'm doing that, there's going to be a lot of minions, a lot of disease amp, and a lot of bursts of damage. So let's try that just to see how it looks. Let's throw out the disease first with Outbreak. Couple Fester Strikes and a Fester Scythe. then you can see I have 8 here. That's how many ghouls in a row I can spend, or generate rather. So I'm going to do that as much as my runes permit. Then I'm going to throw out this raise A bomb, which is going to burst a huge ton of wounds. You can see, whoa, look at all those sources of damage. You see that? That is cool. Then I have some death coil procs, which are giving me more ghouls rather. And then I can putrefy them. That's a burst of damage. That's a burst of damage. Got to get a little bit more. That's a burst of damage. Coil proc for some more ghouls. Now 3, 2, 1. Those are all ghouls being generated. So you can see I have so many pets and so many sources of damage. Once we have a details or recount system, that will help a lot. Then we putrefy again, and then again, look at all this. 7 straight Scourge Strikes of ghoul generation. Is that the best way to do the rotation? Absolutely not. I just want to show you how many of those ghouls you can generate. You can see it's like an Army of the Dead here. And every time I press that Army of the Dead ability, which is Raise A-Bomb, you saw all of the sources of damage. That was like all of these putrefies blowing up, then giving us an amp to all of our maguses and ghouls that all start doing damage, and then the diseases were amped up, so they're doing a bunch of damage. You could see like 17 instances of damage all showed up at once. It was a lot of ramp that I built up to have this huge explosion of damage that persists for a long while after I press Raise A-Bomb. So it's not just one press. It goes on and on and on. Very, very cool. You could see the numbers showing up on Scourge Strike, knowing you've got all of those meaningful Scourge Strike presses ahead of you. And of course, every Death Coil glowy circle is going to mean you get even more generation. So it looks so cool. It feels very cool. There's a lot of lag in beta right now, and it does crash a lot. So it is not too much more that I can show you. But as beta goes on and as things change, I would love to make some update videos. But of course, what we're really waiting for is the release, and I can get more into it then. So I really hope this made you excited over the prospects of this class and spec specifically in Midnight. And I can't wait to see you in the game. If you have any questions, I've been streaming again recently, so just let me know. Thank you for being here, and thank you for watching. Peace.